All right. Let's go ahead and call the Senate to order. The Sergeant Arms will please secure the chamber doors. Members, please take your seats. Members and children. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President.
All right, Senators, this morning, that's funny. This evening, we are very pleased to have Reverend Emmanuel Johnson join us again from St. Luke's United Methodist Church in Reisterstown, Maryland, guest of the distinguished senator from the 10th District. Please rise for the invocation.
To the all-wise, sovereign God, our Savior, to the one who woke us up this morning and allowed us to see the rising of the sun and the going down of the same, to the one who has been our helper, our provider, and our protector, to God who has been our help in ages past and gone and our help for the future. We come to you tonight to say thank you for being so kind, merciful, and loving. We all come as bad children before a good and merciful Father. We ask you to forgive us of our sins, the sins we have committed by thought, word, and deed, sins we have committed by commission and omission. We ask that you be here tonight in this chamber as laws are being passed for all Marylanders and not just for a select few. Be in our lawmakers' minds and hearts as they pass legislation. Help us to love each other. Help us to love this state. Help us to love this country. For how can we say we love mankind in America and hate the people in Maryland and America? How can we say we love you and hate our fellow brothers and sisters? Be with our governor as he leads this state to higher heights. Keep him safe from all hurt, harm, and danger. Keep our Senate President, our senators, our Speaker of the House, our delegates, their staff, and all people all over the world. Keep us under your watchful eye and forever in your hands in all that we do. We shall always be careful to give your name the praise, the honor, and the glory. It's your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Thank you. Chair recognizes the senator from the 10th District.
Thanks, Mr. President. Colleagues, Reverend Emmanuel Johnson is a humble servant of God and pastor of St. Luke's United Methodist Church, the oldest African-American church in Reisterstown, Maryland. St. Luke's is known for its rich history. It has been declared a historical landmark. Pastor Johnson is a beacon of light and a pillar of strength in the community, providing spiritual guidance and salvation and other services to individuals seeking a better way of life. You know, the church is small in size, but big in significance. And Mr. President, I ask that you journalize his prayer.
Absolutely. Without objection, we will certainly journalize the invocation this evening and appreciate the invitation. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right. Has everyone...
Mr. President,
yes.
One more thing. May I also acknowledge his First Lady, his wife, his beautiful bride over there, Miss Allison Johnson. Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you for being with us. Excellent. All right, has everyone recorded their presence in the chamber? It appears so. The clerk will take the call. With 45 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. We have a busy night tonight, but we do have a few resolutions here this evening. We want to make sure that we are able to recognize some of our sports athletes, champions. Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd District.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, winning one state championship is difficult. Repeating the next season is rare. Winning 3 consecutive state titles is referred to as a dynasty. The Bruins girls lacrosse team, led by Coach Kelly and her assistants, Coach McNulty, Coach Jones, Coach Fleury, Coach Bergaw, Coach Trout, and Coach Quigley, accomplished the rare three-peat as 4A state champions, continuing to build upon their undeniable place in Bruins athletic history. They also won their 3rd consecutive 4A East Region Championship, finishing with an overall record of 16-4. The 2023 team fought through adversity, moving through the postseason, ultimately making their way to the championship game. In a total team effort, the Bruins overcome a valiant effort from the Delaney Lions, winning a hard-fought battle. Our girls lacrosse program is leaving a legacy that will continue to be a gold standard of our athletic program for many years to come, and I would ask that the resolution be read in full.
The clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to the Broadneck High School girls lacrosse in recognition of winning the 2023 Class 4A Girls Lacrosse State Championship. We applaud your outstanding season and wish you many more. Congratulations. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 11th day of March, 2024.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? We helped out our friends from Anne Arundel. Excellent. All right. The clerk will take the call. To the young ladies of Broadneck High School girls lacrosse team, the Senate of Maryland unanimously congratulates you on your Class 4A lacrosse state championship. Well done, and have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Keep up the great work. Thank you all for joining us today. Keep it up on the field and in the classroom. Both. Winning both. Winning both. It's my dad joke for the day. So, can't promise I don't have another one, though. We'll have to see. All right, sticking back, it looks like the senator from District 9, had all this running of championships. The senator from the 33rd District decided, you know what? I'm going to go for my own. So, senator from the 33rd.
Yeah, got to do it. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, we also have the Broadneck boys lacrosse team. This team, comprised of the dynamic and talented Bruins, won the program's 5th state title and the first since 1997. Always searching for that edge, Coach McGuire and his assistants, Coach Taylor, Coach Sadler, Coach Gaines, and Coach Messersmith led the team to a perfect 20-0 record and their 22nd consecutive county and regional titles, and of course, culminating in the 4A Maryland State Championship. Dedicated to off-season improvement and the program standards guided our 2023 boys lacrosse team to this dominating and historic season. We thank the players, coaches, and entire boys lacrosse community for treating all Bruins fans to this exciting championship run. And I would ask that the resolution be read in full.
The clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Broadneck High School boys lacrosse in recognition of winning the 2023 Class 4A Boys Lacrosse State Championship. We applaud your outstanding season and wish you many more. Congratulations. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 11th day of March, 2024.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To the gentlemen of Broadneck High School boys lacrosse team, the Senate of Maryland unanimously celebrates your 2023 Class 4A Boys Lacrosse State Championship. Congratulations, well done. Excellent. Thank you all for joining us. Keep up the great work. Anyone going to Maryland next year? Any Maryland? No? Ah, very good. Excellent. What year? Excellent. Very nice. Very good. Keep up the great work. Keep winning. Excellent. All right. We have one more championship team today. Let's go ahead and recognize the senator from District 7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, it's my honor to introduce Tomorrow's Ice North Stars, the Atlantic Hockey Federation champions. This team, made up of, as you can see, these incredible young men and women, competed on the Atlantic Hockey Federation, which is made up of 13 states. Their season started in mid-August, and pretty much every weekend, up and down the coast, they've been going to tournaments, games, you name it. They've had an incredible 37-10 season. Took them into the playoffs where they kept winning, racking up the wins, till finally they got to their final game, the championship game. And I will tell you, they started incredibly well. They went up 4 points right away in the first period, but that team from New Jersey, they played from Hollydale, pulled back. They kept coming, fighting. They got up to 6 points themselves. So this team was down by 2 points. With 3 minutes left in the game, they were able to score a goal, which had them down by 1. With incredible coaching skills, they pulled the goalie, gave us that extra sixth man on the ice, and with 57 seconds left, they tied it up, taking it into overtime. And about 3.5 minutes into overtime, they won it and became, thank you. So that's again, champions of the Atlantic Hockey Federation's national team. So, Mr. President, I have a resolution at the desk asked to be read.
Clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all, the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to Tomorrow's Ice North Stars 10U Red Ice hockey team in recognition of your dedication and tireless effort leading to an impressive season record for 2023 to 2024, culminating in winning the American Hockey Federation's 10U Lemieux Championship. Congratulations. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 11th day of March, 2024.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To the young champions of the North Stars 10 and under Red Ice hockey team, the Senate of Maryland unanimously celebrates your wonderful victory. Congratulations. Excellent. Excellent. Well done. Well done.
Mr. President,
Yes, Chair recognizes Minority Whip.
I'm just glad the boys had a chance to shave their playoff beard before
That's
they
a
came
good
to the
point.
floor of the
Great
Senate.
point. Great point. Great point. It's that we're not going to smell the socks, though. You know, we're not going to see. Excellent. Well done. Well done. All right. I think that does it for resolutions. Let's see if we have guests. Any guests today? Guests for introduction. Chair recognizes the senator from the 25th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today we've had a great amount of folks to come join us today. We had a very packed room over at the, we were supposed to be at the Calvert House, but we ended up going to Maryland Inn, and our people showed up through the thick and thin. The mighty folks of District 25, if you're in the building, can you please stand and be welcomed by the Senate of Maryland.
Welcome to the 25th District residents. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. Senator from 18th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the pleasure of introducing the doctor of the day today. Dr. Walter Giblin is here. He's a dermatologist from my legislative district and practices with Anne Arundel Dermatology.
Wonderful.
Please welcome the doctor of the day.
Welcome. I don't know where he is. All right. Any further introductions? Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, they had the March for Life, and they all came out, and we're just hundreds and hundreds of people coming out and celebrating life. Life is important to all of us. We live every day, and we have every moment by the grace of God. So I want to thank all those that came out, and I want to thank all those that their heartfelt time that they had, they just gave it all, and we appreciate them coming out. So thank you, Mr. President.
Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Thank you. All right. Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Senator from the 33rd District.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's now appropriate time to welcome back our pages.
That would work. Yes,
Oh,
please.
Okay. Colleagues, we have our pages, another group of pages back with us again. First, we have Folashade Epibinu from Montgomery County, District 15, a student at Seneca Valley High School. Next, we have Priyanka Gupta from Frederick County, District 3. Next, we have Laura Heelskamp from Garrett County, District 1A, Northern Garrett High School. And next, we have Akil Leggett Jr. from Anne Arundel County, District 30A, a student at Annapolis Senior High School. And next, we have Anya Menga Goraban from Baltimore County, District 7A, from Perry Hall High School. Next, we have Matthew McKay, Allegheny County, District 1B,
All right.
student at the Center for Career and Technical Education.
Excellent. Welcome back.
And last, we have Rohan Warrior, Howard County, District 13, Oakland Mills High School. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And if I may, really quickly, Mr. President, we do have a birthday today.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. Permission to use the senator's name?
Please.
It is the birthday of our Majority Whip, Senator Joanne Benson. If you can just give her a round of applause. Thank you, Mr. President.
We just so hope she enjoys her 29th year, you know? So wonderful. Happy birthday. All right. Let's see. We got the pages. Any other introductions today? Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from the 26th District.
Just a brief announcement, please.
Can
This is not the time you can.
we do it at the end?
Yep,
Do we mind
that's
if we do that?
good.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Any other introductions? Any introductions? If not, all right. So be considered the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. We've got a lot of work today, so we're going to push through as much as we can. Let's go ahead and start with a message from the House. This is number 11. Clerk will read the bills.
House Bill 125, Delegate Rogers, Court, Military Record, Recordation and Inspection, Judicial Proceedings.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills. They will be referred to their appropriate standing committees. We now have layover calendar number 13. 13. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 541, Senator Guile, Maryland Online Data Privacy Act of 2024, question the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable report.
All right. Question is on the adoption of the 14 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objection to the committee amendments? Without objection, the committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 541 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to layover calendar number 14. 14. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 571, Senator Kramer, Consumer Protection, Online Products and Services Data of Children, Maryland Kids Code, questions on the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, question is on the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 571 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go to layover calendar number 15. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 18, Senator Augustine, Health Occupations, Pharmacists, Administration of Vaccines, questions on the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable report.
All right, question is on the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the committee amendment, any discussion? Any objection? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objection? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none. Recognizing the senator from District 1, does the senator have an amendment?
Thank you, Mr. President. I do.
Okay, pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
Okay. Nope, I got it. Thank you.
Give us just a moment to get it up on the board.
Absolutely, sir.
All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a very, very good bill, Senate Bill 18. However, in some of the committee testimony from the National Association of Pediatric Nurse Practitioners, they had suggested a couple things, and one of it is requiring that all vaccinations, including influenza vaccination, be entered into the Immunet in the same time frame which the providers are required to document the administration of vaccines. So the amendment that I have does exactly that, and I ask for a favorable friendly amendment.
All right, the senator has moved the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the maker of the amendment. There is already a requirement in statute that pharmacists have to report vaccinations into Immunet. It's on page 3 of the bill, line 17 and 18. So I don't think the amendment is necessary.
All right. Any further discussion on the amendment? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The noes have it. Are there further amendments to the bill or secretary? Chair recognizes Senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Along that same vein, but hopefully a different conclusion.
All right. Pages will
I-
collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
It's kind of like watching the old Batman television, same bat time, bat channel, but hopefully a different bat outcome.
I think the senator from District 6 has a thought about that.
That's
Excuse me. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Certainly. Along the same vein, very good bill. However, during the committee testimony, the National Association of Pediatric Nurses Practitioners, they opposed it, but unless it was amended to increase the minimum age of 7 years old for requiring the vaccination and the reporting into Immunet. Would urge a favorable, friendly amendment. Thank
All
you,
right.
sir.
The senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the amendment maker for the amendment. This amendment, I think, is also not really necessary because the bill itself already increases the age to age 7 and above for most of the childhood vaccinations. This was a concern that was also brought up by the pediatricians, in addition to the Nurse Practitioners Association testimony that the amendment maker was referencing, a concern that I think originally it was a bill that was drafted as age 5 and above for any childhood vaccinations. The pediatricians and the nurse practitioners had a concern that if it was age 5 or above, that some of these children who need their childhood vaccinations might miss their pediatric visits, and that's why in the process of working this bill through the committee, the age was increased to 7 and above for any childhood recommended vaccinations, with the exception of with the exception of the COVID vaccine, the flu vaccine, and any public health emergency implemented vaccine. And so this bill, as drafted, as amended, already does what the amendment maker is requesting, with the exception of COVID, flu, and any public health vaccines that can be administered for ages 7 and below. And it's reflected in the nurse practitioner's testimony as well. Just to read the one line here, we know that, quote, "We know that pharmacies have consistently increased annual influenza vaccination rates and most recently significantly supported the uptake of the COVID-19 vaccine." And so even the nurse practitioners that are being referenced here recognize that for those instances of the flu vaccine and the COVID vaccine, there's a real value in being able to administer that to ages 7 and below. And so as amended, this current version of the bill already includes 7 and above for any childhood administered vaccines.
All right. Are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Mr. President, I just wanted to speak in support of this amendment because what we just heard about a big part of the reason they wanted to raise it above 7 was concerns about young people, very young children, getting vaccinations without seeing a pediatrician. We need to stop pretending that like a flu vaccine or COVID-19 vaccine is something you just go get a 4-year-old without thinking about. I think if you're not seeing a pediatrician, sometimes those kinds of things, you can have a bad reaction to some of these types of vaccines as a young child because they haven't had the proper checkup. So the amendment, I think, is germane in that 7 and older is young enough to be doing vaccines at a pharmacy without the benefit of a primary care doctor being involved. And I think that's the gentleman's amendment. I do support the amendment and ask for roll call.
All right. Let's hear from the maker of the amendment.
He stole my thunder.
Understood.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Thank you,
On
Mr.
the amendment, any hear from the floor leader?
Just to be clear, the amendment already is for the most part included in the bill as amended, that childhood vaccines can only be administered for 7 and above. All this amendment does is says that children below the age of 7 can't get a COVID vaccine or a flu vaccine from a pharmacist. And I think there's been a lot of value that pharmacists have already brought to being able to vaccinate kids that are under the age of 7 for flu and for COVID. That's why I urge the body to oppose this amendment.
All right. I think we got it. If so, the clerk will. Any further discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? Not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Are there further amendments? Yes, it appears so. Let's hear from the minority whip. Has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I should probably let the gentleman from District 1 steal my thunder on this, I guess, since I stole his thunder on the last one.
All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I hope this is a friendly amendment. There is testimony we received when the bill was before us in committee. One of the things that I thought was very compelling was a concern that around the country, in states where pharmacies have been allowed to do more of this kind of thing, giving pediatric vaccinations, that starting in the pandemic era, maybe even a little bit before, there started to be quotas that were set for how many vaccinations a pharmacy could get. And if you managed a pharmacy chain in an area, you were rewarded for the more if you were able to hit certain quotas. Got to the point where even if you were profitable, there would be questions on, there's these news articles, and I could read them if it wasn't Monday night. I know the body's time is precious, but there were some very interesting articles all about the pressure that pharmacists were under in 2020, 21, 22 from vaccination quotas that they were required to do. So what this amendment simply does is just say that a pharmacist may not receive compensation or benefits in return for administering vaccines to individuals under the age of 18 according to a quota. It's a very specific industry thing. Not all pharmacy chains do this, but this was something that was happening around the country. And I thought it'd be a good idea to put that into this bill just to make it clear that we don't want to be having those kind of incentives when involved in the administering of vaccines to minors. So, Mr. President, I would move the amendment and ask for support.
All right. The Senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the maker of the amendment for sharing this beforehand. In speaking with committee counsel, the committee did not consider or investigate the issues of quotas, and so this was not something that the committee really dug into because it doesn't appear that quotas are really prevalent here in the state. And the concern is that having this provision in here might affect some of the agreements that are in place with PBMs and pharmacists. It could virtually lead to pharmacists not being compensated for the vaccines that they administer. In addition, the Department of Health has made it clear that they believe that pharmacists are qualified to administer these vaccines. There's no evidence that was provided to the committee of any bonus or quota program. The department also did not consider excluding this provision about quotas from the bill to be included in the bill either. And so I don't think this is necessary. It solves a problem that doesn't currently exist and potentially has the impact of eliminating the compensation for pharmacists, which in this case would eliminate the thrust of the bill. So I urge the body to vote against this amendment.
All right. On the amendment, are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, let's hear from the minority whip again.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, just in response to that, if it's not happening that much, it shouldn't be a problem to put in the bill that we shouldn't have quotas for administering vaccinations to minors. And in the testimony, we did hear testimony because it was submitted to us by one organization. There's an article, a 2023 article from CNN about pharmacists at chain pharmacies across the U.S. that told CNN that increased demand for prescription shots and other services without sufficient staff to fulfill those orders has made it nearly impossible for the workers to do their jobs properly. And there's been a lot of issues with that. Now, I'm not here attacking our pharmacists, but in that article and other articles, it discussed the pressure that they were under from some corporate overlords to increase the number of vaccinations, because it's something to get people into the stores, and they want to do more vaccinations. So I just think it would be great to put this in the bill and make sure that we don't have any sort of incentives that are awry. Again, I'm not saying a local pharmacist would want this. I'm saying this could be something that would come out from sort of corporate on high. So I would ask for a roll call, Mr. President, and move the amendment.
Mr.
All right,
President,
on the amendment, Chair recognizes the Vice Chair.
will the
Budget Task.
senator from Carroll County leave for a question?
Appears so.
I would be glad to.
Do
Senator,
you
may
believe
proceed.
everything you hear on CNN?
Well, I consider they say they're the most trusted name in news. So
Do you share that view?
Senator,
I think
Senator,
you might.
please.
Oh wait, I'm
refrain.
sorry.
Refrain. The question's out of order. All right. Let's see. Any further discussion on the amendment? Any further discussion on the amendment? Any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 28 votes in the negative, Senator's amendment fails. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 18 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. I think we are ready for the budget. Should we? No? I think we're gonna, if the chair's ready. Okay. Let's go to the report on the Committee on Budget and Tax. This is report number 7. The clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 360, the President Budget Bill Fiscal Year 2025, favorable with 147 amendments.
All right. As the floor leader, we'd like to ask the chair of the Budget and Taxation Committee to please join us for the floor report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everybody. Mr. President, members of the Senate, the Budget and Taxation Committee has completed its review of the state operating budget for fiscal 2025. Today we report our version of Senate Bill 360, the Budget Bill, and Senate Bill 362, the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act. Mr. President, I will discuss the actions that the Budget and Taxation Committee took on the budget this year. After that, I will ask that both the budget and the BRFA be laid over until the appropriate time on Wednesday, March 13th, for a second reading debate. Before I describe the budget, I would first like to thank all the members of the committee, our amazing committee staff, and the budget staff at DLS. Our work could not be completed without their efforts. Through strong collaboration and partnership with the administration and our colleagues in the House, we present a fiscal 2025 budget that, as approved by the committee, is $63 billion, a decrease of $1.1 billion, or 1.8% from the fiscal 2024 budget. The decrease reflects the use of one-time fund balance and temporary federal COVID relief dollars in fiscal 2024 for targeted investments, including more than $1 billion for PAYGO, $900 million for the Blueprint Fund, and $100 million for the Transportation Trust Fund. It decreases the general fund spending by $1.5 billion, which is a 5% decrease to $25.9 billion. It leaves a general fund balance of $141 million, and as regarding to structural shortfall, it does better than $50 million in meeting our spending affordability committee goals. while absorbing a $255 million revenue write-down. It preserves $1.3 billion in the rainy day fund, which is 9.4% of general fund revenues. The balance falls to $2.1 billion, or 8.6%, if the administration taps it for shortfalls in entitlements. Provides for $199 million in the rainy day fund to ensure Medicaid and foster care are adequately funded. It provides $9.1 billion in state support for public schools and full funding of the Blueprint mandates. It adds $488 million in state funding under the Child Care Scholarship Program to serve low-income families and over 33,000 children, more than double the enrollment that was in January 2021. It restores $10 million for community colleges, providing 9% average annual growth since fiscal 2020. And also restores $5 million for the private colleges, providing 5% annual growth since 2020. Provides 3% COLAs to state employees and 5% COLAs to law enforcement officers. Also provides increments and bonuses to improve retention. In healthcare, it adequately funds Medicaid at $14.5 billion, resolving the identified shortfall and serving 1.6 million Marylanders, including over 680,000 children. It provides $1.4 billion in state support for behavioral health services. Provides a 3% rate increase for healthcare providers and funding to improve community-based provider capacity to reduce the wait lists. In transportation, it increases transportation funding by $429 million to $5.5 billion in fiscal 2025, which includes $2.8 billion for transportation capital and full funding of $396 million for local highway user grants. It includes $150 million in general funds for part of the WMATA contribution to provide relief for the Transportation Trust Fund. In the environment, it transfers $90 million from the Strategic Energy Investment Fund to support Climate Solutions Now Act efforts. Planned investments include energy-efficient infrastructure improvements, electric vehicle charging stations, and electric school buses. In public safety, provides $46 million more than mandated funding level for police aid for a total of $121 million. With regard to the operating adds and capital, it adds $219.4 million for targeted priorities. The adds fully fund debt service obligations and free up $130.2 million in capacity in the capital budget for legislative priorities. Mr. President, let me turn to the materials distributed on each member's desk. First, the materials relating to the budget bill. The report of the Budget and Taxation Committee explains each amendment to the budget. Amendments are numbered in the report and in the committee reprint of the bill. The report includes adjustments to funding, budget bill language, and committee narrative listed by state agency. Please keep in mind that the committee narrative items are not amendments to the bill and are not subject to floor action. However, if you have concerns with narrative items, please bring them to the attention of the committee. The committee reprint of the budget bill reflects the committee's amendments to the budget. Amendments in the budget are numbered and correspond to the explanations in the committee report. Keep in mind that amendments to the budget are to be drawn to the committee reprint. Amendments must be provided to the committee 24 hours in advance of being offered, and proposed additions to the budget must include an identified offsetting reduction. Staff at the Amendment Office are available to assist you. A summary document is included in your packet, which contains exhibits and charts related to the budget bill and to the BRFA. The analysis of the Maryland Executive Budget prepared by the Department of Legislative Services is available to you on your laptops throughout the floor system and to the public on the internet. The analysis describes the significant budgetary changes in all agencies and provides an overview of the budget as submitted. Mr. President, I move that Senate Bill 360 and the committee amendments lie over under the rules until the appropriate hour tomorrow, at which time I will ask that they be special ordered until the appropriate time on Wednesday, March 13th.
All right, the senator's motion is in order, and would like to thank the chairman and members of the committee for the hard work that they've done to get this to us on time and in a way that is, as we would expect, nothing less than the Senate of Maryland. It's an excellent budget. Invest in our priorities. It's a great document. So the motion is in order. The bill and the amendments will lie over under the rule. I believe we are now moving on to the BRFA.
Mr. President, I move that Senate Bill 362 and the committee amendments lie over under the rules until the appropriate hour tomorrow, at which time I will ask that they be special ordered until the appropriate time on Wednesday, March 13th.
All right, again, this is the BRFA. The senator's motion is in order. The bill and the amendments will lie over under the rule. Just to reiterate, members, please, if there is going to be an amendment under our rules as adopted after the new constitutional amendment, it is critical that the committee has a chance to see them and review them before they come to the floor in order to be in order. So please, if there's any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. But we thank the committee for their incredible work. It's been a wonderful start to the year, and as we say to Judy, we're about an eighth of the way there. So just kidding, way better than that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your excellent work. Thank you to members of the committee. Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from the 26th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I make a small announcement? It'll take 1 minute.
Sure.
This is just for information. Do not forget Wednesday is We Are All Friends Forever Day, and that everyone is going to exchange a tie. Everyone is going to wear what you have. We're going to exchange a tie as a sign that there's a word we used to say, Senator Benson, I should use your name, blessed be the tie that binds. You got it. And so we've also, and whatever, everyone will have something, everyone will participate. Women, it's just a reminder, Mr. President, that in this day when everyone is arguing and screaming, that I'm blessed to be in this chamber where we know how to be friends. It's Wednesday. That's all I want to say.
Thanks, Senator. We got a lot of work to do. So we got to keep going. Let's go to the report on the Committee of Education, Energy, and the Environment. This is report number 20. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 472, the President, State Government Permits, Licenses, Certificate Processing, Transparent Government Act of 2024, favorable with 2 amendments.
All right, recognize the senator from District 9 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this administration bill requires each principal department and independent unit of state government by September 1st of 2024 to create a catalog containing specified information of each type of permit, license, or certificate that it issues, and submit the catalog to the governor. By December 1st of 2024 and annually thereafter, each principal department and independent unit must post on its website a description of the application process for each permit, license, or certificate it issues as specified. There are 2 committee amendments. The first makes technical changes, and the second delays the date for which the catalog must be created and the date for which the application information must be posted on the department's website. It requires the catalog to include current information technology system used in application related to tasks that are still performed manually. The amendment also modifies the membership of the Government Efficiency Commission and adds the State Department of Education as a principal department in the state government article. I move the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. All right, the 2 committee amendments. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objection? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 472 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 474, the President, Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity and Related Approvals, Definition of Generating Station, Critical Infrastructure Streamlining Act of 2024, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing Chair of the Committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 474 is a very important pro-jobs economic development bill from our governor. Mr. President, this is an important bill that I think deserves some background and some context. So if the President would indulge me for some background and context, I think that's essential for this one. For those of you who saw the Comptroller's report at the end of December, it painted a picture of the economy that's somewhat stagnant in terms of private sector job growth. So it's more important than ever that we take steps to jumpstart our economy, create private sector jobs, and grow our tax base. And in that regard, the nation, including Maryland, is moving towards a digital economy centered around innovation, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and other technology sectors. And a high-quality data infrastructure is essential to support those sectors, as well as serving critical infrastructure such as government, national security, hospitals, and other things. And so for those of you actually may not know this, past October, President Biden named Baltimore City as a national technology hub, one of only 31 such hubs in the United States of America, which frees up $10 billion in federal funds, some of that which now can go to Baltimore City. And so in 2020, this body provided tax incentives to draw data centers to Maryland, and a brownfield site in Frederick, a former Alcoa plant, was selected as a site. And thereafter, an economic impact study was performed by the Tech Council. The SAGE Policy Group did that. In October 2023, that report was released, and it showed that there would be a $30 billion investment required to build this facility in Frederick until it becomes fully operational in the late 2030s. We're talking 40,000 plus jobs over a 15-year construction phase, $250 million in tax revenues for the state, and $10 billion in economic activity during the construction phase alone. And these are actually quite conservative estimates. There's hundreds of millions of dollars thereafter that will flow to the state when fully operational and a lot more jobs. So bottom line, Mr. President, data centers are coming. Maryland is already paying for the transmission upgrades to support these data centers on their energy bills through the PJM grid network. The question is whether they will come to Maryland, these data centers, along with the jobs and tax revenue that comes with them. Mr. President, beyond the governor and his state agencies, the Maryland Energy Administration, the Maryland Department of Environment, this bill has strong support from organized labor. In fact, I believe it's their #1 priority, this section. The Tech Council, Chamber of Commerce, MACO, because of the tax revenue, and the local permitting that's still preserved in this bill. So the question is, why was this bill introduced by the governor? So a little context there, Mr. President. Back in 1971, Maryland set up a process called the Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, CPCN, to facilitate and approve the development of power plants that supply energy. And it was set up primarily, to a large extent, in response to local attempts to use local zoning and other local tools to block the construction of power plants and transmission lines. The process is cumbersome, there's no statutory deadlines, and it can take 10 to 12 months or longer to play out. So the issue presented here, Mr. President, it does not involve a major power plant, but it's a very narrow issue that revolves around emergency backup diesel generators that are used exclusively during outages and grid failures. And so in this case, the project, the developer who was bringing the data sought an exemption from the CPCN process. And historically, these emergency backup generators have received waivers for things like hospitals, biomedical research labs. In other states, for example, California has something called the Air Resource Board, similar to the CPCN process. They actually specifically exempt these same backup diesel generators for their version of the CPCN. So the exemption was requested and there was an application. The Public Service Commission staff actually recommended the exemption be granted. Why? Largely, no doubt, because these backup generators are still subject to a variety of permitting before construction starts, whether it be air quality, water quality, sediment control, and the MDE has broad oversight authority. There's local zoning, noise requirements, It still needs to be certified to meet federal emission standards under the Federal Clean Air Act, which requires public notice and commentary period. And again, to get before the federal the permit is received. Once those permits are received, the Maryland Department of Environment has broad authority and oversight. With all that said, Mr. President, Public Service Commissioners overruled their staff in this case, finding that these emergency backup diesel generators would be subject to this very lengthy CPCN process. And the moment that happened, the developer immediately announced later that week that they're pulling out of the project in Frederick, given the regulatory uncertainty and the time involved. So what does Senate Bill 474 do? The governor responded with this bill. It does a number of things. It expressly clarifies that on-site backup generation installed at a facility that is considered a component of critical infrastructure qualifies for an exemption from the CPCN process. Secondly, clarifies that these backup generators can only be used for periodic testing or in the case of an emergency when there is a service disruption caused by a grid failure. Next, it clarifies that any exempted site must comply with all applicable regulations regarding noise levels and hours in which testing can occur. Next, requires an annual report to the Maryland Department of the Environment by all exempted facilities that includes date, length of time, and the reason for the backup generators being operated. Also requires a report from the Maryland Energy Administration in consultation with the Department of Commerce and industry representatives detailing, number one, advanced backup technologies that may be emerging, commercial availability to procure these new backup generation technologies, and finally, Mr. President, the affordability of adopting these new backup technologies. Another important point, Mr. President, is during the hearing process and the deliberations in the Triple E Committee, the administration agreed to convene a stakeholder work group during the interim to discuss sustainability, electric reliability, and climate issues, and some other issues that came up during that hearing. Mr. President, there are two amendments, some of which I kind of incorporated into the presentation, but amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2, again, narrows the scope of the CPCN exemption to generating stations that are used as backup and for testing and operations due to grid failure or equipment failure at a site where critical infrastructure is located. The amendments require compliance with all regulations for noise level and testing hours. Finally, the amendment requires 2 reports, one to the Department of the Environment and another to the General Assembly. And I would just also say, Mr. President, that I think Maryland is well positioned to be a national model when it comes to data center growth in a responsible manner while mitigating any environmental and other externalities. And as I stated, Senate Bill 474 from the governor is supported by Labor, Tech Council, Maryland Chamber, MACO, and it passed the committee on a 10-to-1 vote. Mr. President, with all that said, I would move the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the 1 committee report. Thank you for indulging me on this one.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 474 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 704, Senator Hayes, appraisal gap from historic redlining financial assistance program alterations favorable.
Recognize the senator from the 23rd District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this bill expands the purpose of the appraisal gap from the historic redlining financial assistance program in the Department of Housing and Community Development to include helping close appraisal gaps that occur in historically redlined neighborhoods by making financial assistance available to individuals who purchase a qualified property, 1, after a qualified project is completed, 2, at an affordable sales price as determined by regulations adopted by DHCD, and as an owner occupant. There are no committee amendments. I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 704 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 707, Senator Jackson, Armed Forces Support of Military Families and Addition of Space Force, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognize the senator from District 10 as the floor leader.
Thanks, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 707 adds members of the U.S. Space Force to several provisions of the state law that refers to members of the U.S. Armed Forces. The bill also expands existing statutory provisions to authorize military spouses and residents of states whom are members of the National Guard of another state or part of reserve components of the U.S. Armed Forces to terminate or suspend certain consumer-related contracts when called into military service. There are two committee amendments. Amendment number 1 makes technical changes and adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 allows the governor to award commission, appointment, or promotions to a deceased officer. I move the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 707 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 1033, Senator Carter, Maryland Building Performance Standards, local request for guidance, religious considerations, favorable.
Recognize the senator from District 3 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill requires the Maryland Department of Labor, on the request of a local jurisdiction and in consultation with the Office of the Attorney General, to provide guidance for the implementation and enforcement of the Maryland Building Performance Standards in relation to any religious observance, practice, or belief. There are no committee amendments, no fiscal impact. This bill passed unanimously in committee. Therefore, I move for the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 1033 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's go to report number 21. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 567, Senator Muse, Public Institutions of Higher Education Student Withdrawal Policy, Reimbursement of Tuition and Fees, Cameron Carden Act of 2024, favorable to amendments.
Recognize the President Pro Tem as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 567 requires each public institution of higher education to adopt a policy that authorizes a student to withdraw withdraws for extenuating circumstances, which specifically includes illness, injury, hospitalization, and mental health and wellness. The policy must include a provision to reimburse tuition and fees for the semester in which a student withdraws if the extenuating circumstances inhibit the student's ability to acquire an education at the public institution of higher education as defined in the policy. There are two committee amendments. The first is technical and adds co-sponsors. The second requires the institution of higher education to refund rather than reimburse tuition and fees paid by the student. We can't reliably estimate the fiscal impact. I move adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 567 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 654, Senator A. Washington, Prince George's County Student Support Specialist Networks and Success Action Plan, Student Supports and Success Act, favorable with one amendment.
We'll recognize the senator from the 23rd District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this bill establishes a student support specialist network with specified membership in each public high school in Prince George's County and requires each network to develop, complete, and implement a student support success action plan. To support each network in developing these plans, Prince George's County Board of Education must develop, approve, and disseminate a template for a student support success action plan with specified elements by a certain date. The county board must set a deadline for submission of plans for approval from networks, and each network must submit a plan for approval before implementation. There's one committee amendment. The amendment alters the date by which the county board must develop and approve and disseminate a template for the plans to December 1st, 2024 from August 1st, 2024. There is no state fiscal impact. I move adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 654 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 657, Anne Arundel County Senators, Anne Arundel County Student Loan Assistance Repayment Program for Educators established. Favorable.
Recognizing the senator from the 35th District is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill authorizes Anne Arundel County to establish a student loan assistance repayment program for educators employed by Anne Arundel County Public Schools. The purpose of the program is to attract, recruit, and retain a diverse group of qualified educators in that school system that reflect the student population within their county schools. The program must be administered by AACPS. Funds for the program will be provided on an annual basis in the county budget in an appropriation separate from the county's appropriation to the operating budget for Anne Arundel County Board of Education. Funds for the program may be used to cover administrative expenses of the program. There are no committee amendments. I'd like to move for adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Does the senator have an amendment? Is that what the?
I do, Mr. President.
Okay, let's, any objections to the adoption of the report? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Senator has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And with apologies to the floor leader, I had discussed this amendment with the my fellow senator from Anne Arundel County from District 31. This amendment would just ensure that we're not only including teachers that could participate, but also our other educators, education support professionals, and more. And just to make sure, should a county choose to implement this program of student loan repayment assistance, that this could be used not only for teachers, but everyone else in the ecosystem of education. And again, with apologies to the floor leader, I hope it's a friendly amendment.
All right, let's hear from the floor leader.
Mr. President, I'm pinch hitting for my colleague from the 31st District, so if it's good with that colleague, we'll look at it as a friendly amendment.
All right. Any objections? Senators move the amendment. Any objections from the floor? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Do we have any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 657 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 852, Washington County Senators, Washington County Board of Education members, residency requirement. Favorable.
Recognizing the senator from the 35th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This local Washington County bill imposes a residency requirement for members of the Washington County Board of Education. Specifically, the bill requires immediately preceding the date the board member takes office, each member of the Washington County Board of Education must be a resident of Washington County for at least 6 months and resident of the state of Maryland for at least 12 months. Under the bill, board members must maintain a primary residence in Washington County during the member's term. Any board member who no longer maintains a primary residence may not continue as a board member. There are no committee amendments. I'd like to move for adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 852 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 1058, Senator Kramer, Education Curriculum Standards, Anti-Hate and Holocaust Education, Educate to Stop the Hate Act. Favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the chair of the committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just start with a couple of important points about SB 1058, Educate to Stop the Hate Act. It's been substantially amended from the bill as introduced, and for those of you who are concerned about any changes that were made that alters the current structure, the interplay between state and local school system, the bill as amended does not, I repeat, does not change the existing responsibilities between the state, which controls basically content curriculum standards at the State Board of Education, and local school systems, which control how teachers will teach their curriculum topics, what materials to use, what books, what kind of training and all that kind of stuff. These respective responsibilities are preserved in the amended version of the bill. And it's for that reason, Mr. President, the State Board of Education, which was opposed to the original version of this legislation, again, in its original form, is now supportive of this bill as amended, the bill that's in front of us. The interim superintendent has put in place a new content standards and curriculum review structure. This bill essentially codifies that structure along with some guardrails, a mandatory review every 8 years. It strengthens those existing standards by directing the state board to adopt additional standards around anti-hate and racism. The bill requires that by January 1st, 2025, the State Board of Education develops or revises and adopts state content and curriculum standards and frameworks, curriculum guides for instruction on 1, comprehensive anti-hate education, number 2, the history and contributions of historically disadvantaged groups and criminal acts in violation of international law or treaties, and 3, the Holocaust. To reiterate, Mr. President, curriculum guides and standards will be developed at the state level. The locals will decide how these topics are taught in the classroom, what materials and books are used based on local feedback, review committees, third-party review, curriculum reviews, stakeholder, as I say, feedback. Non-public schools are encouraged, not required, to include the revised instructional content adopted by the state board in their curriculum, but again, they're not mandated to do so. That said, Mr. President, Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes the bill as introduced and lays out what I just described to the body. And Mr. President, I would move the adoption of the 2 amendments and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objection? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 1058 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Let's stick with Triple E. Report 22. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 659, Senator Augustine, Prince George's Gateway Development Authority modifications, favorable of 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This local bill requires the Prince George's Gateway Development Authority to meet at least 4 times per year and requires authority staff to provide support for the operation of the authority in consultation with the Department of Housing and Community Development. The bill takes effect July 1st, 2024. There are 2 committee amendments. The first amendment makes technical changes. The second amendment requires the staff of the Prince George's County Redevelopment Authority to support the Gateway Development Authority. I move the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 659 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 683, Senator Hester, Tree Expert Licenses, Workers' Compensation Insurance Requirements and Application and Renewal Fees, Alterations, favorable of 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this bill is extremely important for consumer protection. It deals with licensed tree experts, which deal with trees, care, removal, crowning, and everything else for trees over 20 feet tall. This bill requires each licensed tree expert in each business that employs a licensed tree expert to carry and show proof of workers' compensation insurance in the form and amount required by the Department of the Natural Resources. The department may permanently revoke or temporarily suspend a tree expert license if the license holder fails to maintain their workers' compensation insurance. There are 2 committee amendments. The first one makes technical changes, and the second one sets limits on examination fees, initial license fees, and renewals fees, as well as alters the insurance provisions. The amendment instead authorizes the department to permanently revoke or temporarily suspend a tree license if the license holder fails to maintain the liability, property, or workers' compensation insurance. I move the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Chair recognizes the minority whip on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if the floor leader could yield for question.
Will the floor leader yield?
Yes.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you so much. So on the committee amendments first, I see we struck out, the committee amendments strike out the every licensee or business employing a license shall carry and show proof of workers' comp insurance. And so that's been struck in the committee amendments? Or did it get moved somewhere else? I'm just checking that part of the bill first.
I believe it was slightly moved out. Stand by, we're calling committee counsel. It was moved, Senator.
To page, is it on page 4 here? Fails to maintain liability. It's just saying you cannot fail to maintain liability.
Exactly, and what this bill will do is it now enables the department to check if they're failing to maintain the insurance.
Okay, but it doesn't require, that's actually a positive. It doesn't,
Yes.
because I've actually heard from some local folks about this issue before, but it is not requiring them all to carry it with them. It just has, they just have to make sure that they are maintaining this properly, correct?
Correct.
Okay, okay, that's good. A concern I have, though, is currently the fees for a new license new license is $30 and renewal is $20, or?
That is current law.
Okay, so current law. So this bill, as this bill came in, it was going to just wipe that away and say it could be any amount, correct?
That is how the bill came in.
Okay, and then, which that's definitely not a good idea. But we still have the fee now. Is it now in here? The fees established in according to section may not exceed, but it has the initial license fee of $55 and the renewal fee $100.
So that is correct. The Department of Natural Resources and the Maryland Arborist Association agreed on these fee limits. So it came in with no limit, and then they said, well, these are reasonable fees to accept.
And when it says the examination fee, what is that referring to? It's $45.
That's the original when they take their test fee.
And right now, that's what is that right now? I shouldn't see it in the bill. It's
$30 right now. So we're going from $30 to $45.
And then from 20 to 55.
That is correct.
From 30 to 55, and then the renewal is more expensive than the initial license.
Well, that's because you have to pay the initial license and the examination fee together.
Okay, so really what we've got is your initial license is now going to be, basically if you count the examination and the initial license, it's going to be $110, and the renewal is $100.
Yes, but the renewal is every 2 years. It's not every year, it's every other year.
Okay, so it's, all right, it works out, gotcha.
So could
Go
I
ahead,
just
yeah.
remind you that, this is fairly modest compared to what other states have? So Connecticut requires a $200 application fee as well as a $21 convenience fee. And Louisiana requires a $114 exam fee and a $100 renewal fee each year. And that's each year as opposed to every other year. So it's
Okay.
actually great to be in the tree business in the state of Maryland.
Could I ask you what was the stated reasons for the desire to remove the lower fee? Was there a cost associated with it?
So in current law, the fees can only cover the cost of processing the application. But we actually have a very good program which requires us to check to see if they actually have this insurance. So the reason for the slight increase in fee is to make sure the department can check and make sure the program is working as it should.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the clarification. So these fees will only cover. There won't be any excess that comes in because of this, or does the fee now? Do we think this rate will cover those costs?
No, the fee is modestly established to cover the cost of implementing the program. It's something like $60,000 or $70,000 a year, which I think will cover one person at DNR.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your answers. I really appreciate it. Mr. President, I wonder if I could, do a layover for tomorrow.
All right. The senator's motion is in order. The bill and the amendment will lay over under the rule. Do we have any more on that calendar? Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 797, Senator Hester, Education Access to Attorneys, Advocates, and Consultants for Special Education Program and Fund Established, favorable to amendments.
Recognize the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is a really important issue that we've been dealing for decades. At the heart of this matter is making sure that children who have an individual education plan, that their parents can afford to work with them through the court system if they should need an attorney. So basically what the bill does, it establishes the access to attorneys, advocates, and consultants for special education program and the associated fund. They're both administered by the Maryland Volunteer Lawyers Service. The program directs resources and services to eligible students to provide access to legal, advocacy, and consultant services. Eligible students are those with a disability whose parents, 1, have a household income not more than 150% of the Maryland Legal Services Corporation income guidelines, and 2, make at least one attempt to resolve a disagreement with a public agency regarding a child's special education services or program. There are 2 committee amendments. The first one is technical and adds co-sponsors. The second amendment strikes duplicative data reporting requirements, defines the term advocates, requires the Maryland Volunteer Lawyer Service to seek qualified attorneys, advocates, and consultants and develop specified training, authorizes them to provide or authorize other nonprofit organizations to provide specified training, requires advocates and consultants to complete specified training, and requires the Maryland State Department of Education to administer the program fund. It also clarifies that the fund can only be used for certain purposes and decreases the mandatory appropriation to $1 million each year. I move the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 797 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 806, Senator Zucker, Business Regulation, Licensed Home Improvement Contractors Liability Insurance, favorable.
Recognizing Chair of the Committee is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill increases the amount of general liability insurance that a licensed home improvement contractor must maintain. This number has not been increased since 1963. When it was set at 1963 at $50,000, when the average home price in the state of Maryland was $18,400. And so what this bill does is and by the way, I should say that today, nobody even writes anything less than $500,000, and it's actually recommended that you carry $1 million in that kind of liability insurance. So what the bill does, again, for the first time since 1963, it takes it from that $50,000 up to $500,000. Again, there was no opposition to this bill, passed unanimously. I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 806 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 807, Senator Carrozza, Somerset County Fire Rescue and Emergency Medical Services, favorable.
All right. Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from the 38th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 807 is a local bill. It would authorize the Somerset County Commissioners to establish a body to administer the county's affairs relating to fire, rescue, and emergency medical services while maintaining the volunteer emergency services. This also would give authority for the Somerset County Commissioners to establish an Emergency Services Advisory Council. And that is to provide the county commissioners with their recommendations on the operations of fire suppression, emergency medical, and hazardous material services in the county. Just to share with my colleagues, there are 8 volunteer fire companies in Somerset County. And this local bill proposes a fire EMS organizational structure that 14 other counties and Baltimore City have in place. There are no committee amendments, no fiscal impact, and I move for a favorable committee report on SB 807.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 807 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Actually, let's do this. Let's read referral out of rules. We have a report from the Committee on Rules, report number 4. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 1145, Senator Saling, Public and Non-Public Schools, Child Sex Offenders Prohibition on In-Person Attendance to Judicial Proceedings.
Recognizing the Chair of the Rules Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. The Rules Committee met last week and unanimously voted to re-refer Senate Bill 1145 to the appropriate standing committee. I move for the favorable adoption of the report.
All right, Floor then moves to the adoption of the favorable report. Any objections? Well, I guess it wouldn't be the favorable report. It's for the re-referral, right? Any objections? Without objection, the bill would be re-referred to the Judicial Proceedings Committee. Let's go to Budget and Taxation. This is report number 6. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 126, Senator Augustine, Transportation, WMATA, Operating Assistance Alteration, Maryland Metro Funding Act of 2024, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the Senator from the Capital City is the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 126 merely temporarily pauses the requirement of the Secretary of Transportation to withhold a portion of the state's annual operating grant to the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, better known as WMATA, when WMATA's budget increases by more than 3% over any fiscal year, and would allow WMATA to access the $150 million in funding already provided in the budget that is on your desk. Colleagues, in 2018, this body passed a bill limiting the state share of WMATA's operating budget when the WMATA annual budget increased more than 3%. The world has changed a lot in many ways since 2018. Obviously, inflation, growing labor costs, lower ridership. WMATA's budget has increased slightly more than the 3% cap. We believe it's increased last year about 3.8%. So this bill simply temporarily, from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 28, lifts the cap and allows for the money the governor has put in the budget to actually go towards WMATA to meet this temporary challenge they're experiencing. Mr. President, there are 2 committee amendments. The first is technical on the fiscal years I just mentioned, and the second postpones the requirement that MDOT withhold a portion from that grant until 2028 and alters certain details of the withholding provisions. There's also very much a small amendment, but I think it's a mighty amendment to make sure the chair of the WMATA board rotates and that Maryland actually gets that seat every once in a while. The last time we had a chair was 13 years ago. And so I think that's an important but meaningful amendment. And with that, Mr. President, I move adoption of the 2 amendments and the favorable committee report.
All right, Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. That last amendment sounded pretty good, but notwithstanding that, I would ask that the bill and the amendments lie over under the rule.
Senator's motion is in order. The bill and the amendment will lie over under the rule. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 556, Senator Saling, Procurement, Construction, Contingency Fund, and Contract Modification, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing the bill sponsor is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 556 as amended authorized payment for construction contingency funds under specific conditions in current law for construction contracts that include price adjustments for material price fluctuations of identified eligible project-specific materials. There's 2 amendments. One amendment is technical because of the change of the title. Second, strikes the provision in the bill requiring contracts to include clauses to require contract modifications when there is a substantial increase or decrease of the cost of materials. I move adoption of the 2 committee amendments in favorable report, Mr. President.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 683 is hereby ordered printed for 3rd reading. Clerk, read the next bill. Layover? No. We just have some
There it is.
challenges in the interwebs. We're
Senate
back.
Bill 604, Senator Quarterman, Judges Retirement System Special Death Benefit, favorable with 2 amendments.
All right, recognizing the senator from District 2 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 604, as amended, establishes a line of duty death benefit that is payable to the surviving spouse or dependents of a member of the Judges Retirement System who is killed without willful negligence by the member and with death arising out of or in course of the actual performance of duty. It also establishes a retroactive benefit for the surviving spouse of any JRS member killed in the line of duty prior to the bill's effective date. The bill also authorizes a surviving spouse, child, or dependent parent of the JRS member killed in the line of duty to enroll and participate in the state health insurance plan. The bill takes effect June 1, 2024. There are two amendments. Amendment number 1 makes a technical change to the title and it adds co-sponsors. Amendment number 2 establishes a survivor enrolled in the state health plan shall receive the maximum subsidy allowed for a retiree, clarifies the death benefit is linked to the salary payable for the judicial position held by the deceased member, and clarifies the offset reduction from the return of the member contributions for benefits already paid. Move the adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objection? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill, further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 604 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 667, Senator Charles, State Procurement, Maryland State Board of Contract Appeals, Attorney's Fees, favorable with two amendments.
Recognize the Senator from Montgomery County as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, colleagues. Senate Bill 667 is authorizing regarding the Maryland State Board of Contract Appeals. What it does is it allows for a bidder, an offeror, or a contractor to get reasonable attorney fees if they prevail in appealing a bid protest or any contract claim to the board. There are two committee amendments. The first is technical. The second authorizes rather than requires. As I said, I would move the two committee amendments and adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 667 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 747, Senator Gazzone, Local Government Annual Audit Reporting Requirements Alterations, favorable with two amendments.
Recognizing the majority whip is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 747, as amended, imposes a financial penalty through the reduction of 20% of specified state aid payments for the failure of a local government to submit required audited financial reports within 2 calendar years after the deadline. There are two amendments. The first requires the report to be 2 years late instead of 1 year before state aid will be withheld. It would also allow the withholding of highway user revenue and disparity grants. The amendment also clarifies the timing of the withheld funds. It reinstated if the local government comes into compliance. The second amendment makes this act prospective only and would be applicable beginning with the fiscal year 2024 audits. I move the adoption of the committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 747 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 763, Senator Carrozza, Somerset County, Sale of Property, Rebels Neck Road, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from District 7 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is a local county bill for Somerset County. It deals with the sale of property there at Rebels Neck Road. This piece of property is looked at to be used for industrial park. Years ago, there was consideration of being the Walmart distribution center. That did not happen, and the county has constantly looked at making it an industrial park. What they're trying to do now, it was bought by a private entity. The county then bought it themselves. They're looking to sell this surplus. They're allowed to sell it via a bid or a sealed bid or auction, but they want the ability to be able to kind of negotiate with the buyers and make sure it's bought in best intention. So with that, that's what this bill does. So I move, there was no amendments, no opposition. I move favorable on the bill.
All right, floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 763 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 769, Frederick County Senators, Frederick County Property Tax Credit for Property Located in Historic District, alterations favorable.
Recognize the senator from the 2nd District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 769 alters a local property tax credit for Frederick County for property located in a historic district by repealing the calculation and duration of the property tax credit and instead authorizes Frederick County to provide for 1, the amount and duration of the property tax credit, 2, additional eligibility criteria for the property tax credit, 3, regulations and procedures for the application and uniform processing of requests for the property tax credit, and 4, any other provisions necessary to carry out that property tax credit. There are no committee amendments. Move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 769 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 777, the President, State Treasurer, Membership Responsibilities favorable with 2 amendments.
Bingo.
My favorite bill every year. Jackpot bill. Yeah. Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. The only downside is I wish this was my bill, but at least I'm presenting it. Colleagues, Senate Bill 777 was actually at the request of the state treasurer. He serves on 4 boards that he wished to be removed from, which he was, based on our actions, and he's replaced by the comptroller of the state on 2 of those. There's two committee amendments. First is technical, and the second one adds the comptroller of the state to 2 of the boards. I move the 2 committee amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill Jackpot 777 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 800, the President, Maryland Uniform Disposition Abandoned Property Act of Maryland 529 Program, exemption favorable, 2 amendments.
Recognize the senator from Montgomery County's floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 800, this is at the request of the treasurer again. He views it as cleanup and having internal processes within his agency. Right now, it protects a number of the 529 plans. As amended, this bill will protect a number of the 529 plans from unclaimed property. Amendment number 1 makes technical changes. Amendment 2 clarifies that uncashed checks are subject to the Abandoned Property Act. There are these 2 committee amendments. I'd move the 2 committee amendments and adoption of favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 800 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 822, Senator Kramer, Income Tax Subtraction Modification, State Law Officer Enforcement Officers favorable with 1 amendment.
Recognizing the senator from District 2 is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 822 expands eligibility for the existing subtraction modification for law enforcement officers who reside in political subdivisions with specified crime rates to include state law enforcement officers who reside in these qualifying political subdivisions. The bill applies to tax year 2024 and beyond. There is 1 amendment which adds co-sponsors to the bill. Move adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 822 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 829, Senator Carrozza, Somerset County Fire Companies Appropriations favorable.
Recognizing the senator from District 7 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, again, another local county bill for Somerset County. This deals with the volunteer fire companies. This increases the county's allotment by 2%. It's done on a 5-year basis. The last one was this year. This takes us from 2025 to 2030. This is a public safety bill. Think about it. There's thousands of families that make their pilgrimage every year to the Eastern Shore, Ocean City, Chris Field, Aztec Island. This is make sure that when they're there, if they need a medic shows up. They get in a car accident, rescue squad shows up. There's a fire engine shows up. So a good public safety bill for our constituents when they travel to the Eastern Shore. Mr. President, no opposition, so I move favorable on the bill.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 829 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 850, Senator Quarterman, State Personnel, Line of Duty, Death and Funeral Benefits, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from District 2 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 850 increases the cap on reasonable funeral expenses from $10,000 to $25,000 paid to surviving family members or the estate of specified public safety individuals, and provides this benefit for surviving family members or state employees who are killed or die in the performance of duties. Additionally, the bill increases the death benefit from $100,000 to $125,000 for specified surviving family members of all state employees and Maryland National Guard members, including employees in legislative, judicial, and executive branches. The death and funeral benefits are indexed to inflation beginning in 2026. Specified surviving family members of state employees who were killed in the performance of duties on or after January 1, 2023 may request death and funeral benefits under this bill by December 31st, 2024, and the Secretary of Budget and Management must administer the benefits as specified. The bill takes effect June 1st, 2024. There are no amendments. Move adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 850 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 859, Senator Zucker, State Department of Education, Division of Rehabilitation Services, funding, favorable.
Recognizing the bill sponsors, the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Colleagues, I wanted to bring your attention to Senate Bill 859. And the reason why is within the State Department of Education, there's Division of Rehabilitative Services. And what this program does is it trains and helps place individuals with developmental disabilities. This bill is authorizing, not requiring the governor to put money in the budget. But as it stands, this program is $700,000 short of being able to access the full federal match. The actions that the Budget and Taxation Committee have taken in committee have added $700,000 to this program, which will allow them to have the full federal match. There are no committee amendments, and I'd move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 859 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 897, Senator Carrozza, Income Tax Subtraction Modification, Death Benefits, Law Enforcement Officers and Firefighters, favorable with one amendment.
Recognizing Senator from St. Mary's as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 897 as amended is an emergency bill that allows a subtraction modification against the personal income tax for a payment of a death benefit under a collective bargaining agreement from a county or municipality in the state to their surviving spouse or other beneficiary of a law enforcement officer or a firefighter whose death arises out of the course of employment as a law enforcement officer or a firefighter. This bill applies to a tax year 2022 and beyond. There was one committee amendment that makes the bill an emergency bill and adds sponsors. Move for the adoption of the amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 897 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 970, Senator Gazzone, Energy Storage Systems Income Tax Credit and Grant Program Sunset Extension, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from Capital City as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, Senate Bill 970 simply extends the current energy storage system income tax credit for 2 additional tax years through tax year 2026 and delays the start of the energy storage system grant program through the Maryland Energy Administration by 2 years starting in January 1st, 2027. All told, the tax credit is worth $750,000, but capped for individual projects that you can find in the fiscal note. There are no committee amendments. I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves to the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 970 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senator Bill 973, Senator Gazzone, Hospitals Private Hospital Grant Program Funding, favorable.
Recognizing the senator from Baltimore City as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 973 codifies the private hospital grant program to make recommendations to the governor for funding in the annual state budget for capital projects as private hospitals. The Maryland Hospital Association must establish a review process, committee, and submit recommendations to the governors and the Secretary of DBM. The Department of Budget and Management and Department of Legislative Services must consult with the committees in establishing the project funding request process and making recommendations for the funding request. Beginning in fiscal 2026, the governor may include in the capital or operating budget an appropriation of $20 million for the program, Mr. President. There are no amendments. Move adoption of the committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 973 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 1027, Senator Gazone, Property Tax Appeals Definition of Taxpayer, favorable with 2 amendments.
Recognizing Senator from District 6 is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 1027 as amendment is an emergency bill that defines a taxpayer for the purpose of a property tax appeal to mean a person who has an ownership interest in a property that is subject to an appeal. The bill must be construed to apply retroactively and apply to and interpret it to any petition for review after filing of the date of December the 1st, 2022 as an assessment property. It's two amendments. Two amendments. The first is technical and the second is strikes legal and substitute ownership. For the clarification, move adoption to the committee amendment in the favor report, Mr. President.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments in the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amendment report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Are there any amendments, further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 1027 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 1066, Senator Zucker, Sports Wagering, Independent Evaluations of Sports Wagering Content Required, favorable.
Recognizing Senator from Montgomery County as the floor leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senate Bill 1066 is identical, except for one word that from the bill that we passed last year unanimously. This bill requires a sports betting wagering licensee or sports wagering operator to make sure that they're engaged with an independent evaluator to make sure that what they're posting is consumer friendly and provides consumer protection. Again, this is identical to a bill we passed unanimously last year, except for one word instead of authorizing or requiring. There's no committee amendments, and I move adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Senator, if we could take that off the floor, please. Thank you. All right. Question is on the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 1066 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right. Let's go to Special Order Calendar 38. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 475, the President, Center for Firearm Violence Prevention Establishment. Question is the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right. Question is on the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 475 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. We've got another one, 39. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 6, Senator Guile, Property Tax Credit for Dwelling House of Disabled Veterans Alterations. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report as amended.
Question is on the adoption of the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the favorable report as amended is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 6 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Oh, what is this? Special Order Calendar 37. I got out of order. Clerk will read the bill. This one? Okay.
Senate Bill 764, Senator Hayes, Arts Incubator Work Group established. Question is on the adoption of the favorable report.
Questions on the adoption of the favorable committee report? Chair recognizes the senator from the 22nd District.
Thank you, Mr. President. You mind if we special order this bill to appropriate time on Wednesday for purpose of amendment?
Senator has moved to special order the bill. Any objections? Any objections? Without objection, the bill will be special ordered to the appropriate time on Wednesday. All right, we have a layover calendar, number 16. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 244, Chair, Finance Committee, Public Health, Clean Indoor Air Act revisions. Question is on the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, recognizing Chair of the committee on the committee amendments.
No, we did the committee amendments.
We still have them up here.
Okay. We're waiting for a possible amendment, floor amendment, and I don't.
We may have it. I think we may have it. So let's, and we'll assume that it's drawn up to the amended bill. Okay, so the question is on the 3 committee amendments. Are there any objections to the 3 committee amendments? Without objection, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the amended report is adopted. Senator from the 23rd District appears to have an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Just give us one moment to get it up on the board. As we're waiting, it seems there's a little bit of tiredness in the air. Despite the minority whip's efforts, we are still working on daylight savings time. One day. Truly, that's terrible. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, if you recall, we had some robust discussion about this the other day where there was an amendment that stated a business does not possess a license for the sale of alcoholic beverages for on-site consumption with respect to the Clean Indoor Air Act. Mr. President, this amendment simply requires that a work group be established. The work group shall include 2 members of the Senate designated by the Senate President, 2 delegates designated by the Speaker of the House, 1 representative from Alcohol, Tobacco, Cannabis Commission, 1 representative from the Maryland Department of Health, 1 representative from the Cigar Retailers Trade Association, to look at this, see what's going on around the state, and put forth some significant recommendations. In addition, while this is going on, there will be a moratorium in which no additional licenses may be issued to tobacconists from July 1st, 2024 through July 1st, 2026 inclusive, and that will give us enough time to look at the recommendations and put forth some legislation so that we can have a consistent standard across the state.
All right, question is on the amendment. Senator has moved.
I move the amendment.
Recognizing the chair of the committee.
I'll accept it as a friendly amendment.
All right, appears there's any objections from the floor? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. All right, any further amendments to the bill? Yes, chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery has an amendment. Give us just a moment. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a one-word amendment. In one part of the bill, the reference is to tobacco and cannabis, cannabis and hemp. It does not include tobacco in the second reference. So this would simply include it for consistency. So in all places in this bill, it would refer to tobacco, cannabis, and hemp. Move the favorable amendment.
Senators move the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader. I think we're... Just a moment.
Should I say friendly? All right, we'll take it as a friendly amendment.
All right, it's a friendly amendment. Any objections? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there additional amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 244 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Oh, I thought it was. Almost. Let's do a quorum call, and if we could please ring the bells.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their presence? All right, has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 44 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. We have third reading calendar number 39. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 417, Senator Hayes, Election Administration, State Administration, Local Boards, and Election Directors.
Senate Bill 417 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 44 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 417, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 449, Senator Muse, Criminal Procedure and Competency to Stand Trial Dismissal.
Senate Bill 449 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 36 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 449 having received a constitutional majority is declared passed. All right, the desk is officially clear. It was a long night, I know, for everyone, but this was the trial run. This was like the appetizer. So this is going to be a long week, keeping Saturday on the books. So we're going to definitely have we'll do double sessions, probably Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but more likely we'll hold double sessions Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, hold Saturday. We got a lot to get through, so just keep that in mind. Floor time is going to be very precious this week, so it's going to be really, really important that we are thoughtful. All right, any committee announcements? Finance, any announcements? Nope. B&T? Nope. Other standing committees? Sorry. Delegations? Caucuses?
No problem. The Senate Democratic Caucus will be meeting at 9 a.m. tomorrow in person.
Thank you. Let's check in with the Minority Whip.
And we'll have coffee there.
I think we're all going to need some coffee. The Senate Republican Caucus, excuse me, whoa. The Senate Republican Caucus will be meeting at 8:30, and we have a special guest, so we do need our members to be right on time.
All right.
So thank you.
All right, excellent. 8:30. All right, any further announcements? Yes, Chair recognizes Senator from Montgomery.
Thank you, Mr. President. Any members of the Women's Caucus who want to participate on Wednesday in the Friendship Outreach thing, come see me for a little gift.
All right, it may not be a floor thing. We have too much time on the thing, so we're going to have to we'll find a way to make it work. All right, any additional items? If not, let's go ahead and do a quorum call.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 44 members recognize their presence, quorum being achieved, Senate remains in session. The Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Tuesday, March 12th at 10 a.m.
Without objection, so ordered. Stay safe, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. See you tomorrow.